an authentic tsunami of fire. This is not poetry, it is a brutal reality. Russia's revenge, ladies and gentlemen, has arrived, and no, it was not aimed at civilians as Ukraine often does. It targeted the hardened men of the regime. It was a relentless rain of drones and missiles. Fortified positions crumbled within minutes under the enemy's assault. This counterattack was not a spontaneous outburst. It was a calculated operation designed to break the military backbone of Kyiv. Logistical bridges, ammunition depots, and command centers were wiped off the map in just 24 hours. And yet, the hunt is only beginning. A tsunami of fire. One could say this is what hell looks like, and it is precisely what Ukrainian troops in Odesa have received. Russia had had enough. Moscow said, "It's time to act." And when it decided to move, the Black Sea front transformed into a boiling cauldron that no triumphant narrative could survive. Within hours, the Odesa region went from being a showcase of Ukrainian resistance to an almost isolated territory, hammered by a torrent of fire along the Danube and relentless strikes against key logistical nodes. While Kyiv continued to proclaim victories, reality was starkly revealed in chaotic withdrawals and communications centers that simply went silent. The Russian strike was far from improvised. Russian forces launched massive attacks across the Black Sea region, combining geranium drones with caliber cruise missiles fired from Black Sea Fleet vessels. The detonations reverberated through the river port of Ismail and its surroundings, each explosion severing another link in Ukraine's logistical chain. Ismail is no ordinary port. It houses warehouses and storage areas for equipment, supplies, and NATO weapons coming from Romania, the true lifeline for many Ukrainian units in the south. By targeting these depots, Moscow did more than destroy steel and ammunition. It struck directly at the western hand feeding Kyiv's army in the shadows. The second strike was equally calculated. A new attack focused on a pontoon bridge near the fixed bridge destroyed in the village of Mykolaiv in the Odesa region. Once this improvised structure was out of commission, the consequences were brutal. Most of the region became isolated from the rest of Ukraine, and supply routes from Romania were severely disrupted. War correspondents from the Telegram channel Chronicles of Geraniums reported this in real time. Airstrikes also hit military facilities in the port and outskirts of Mykolaiv. Another key point, in this area were bases of British and French special forces, not only training Ukrainian fighters but conducting sabotage operations inside Russia. Each explosion over these installations sent a direct message to London and Paris. Russian fire spread even further. Explosions were reported in Chernihiv, Sumy, Dnipro, and Kharkiv. Enemy monitoring channels confirmed that no corner of the map could be considered truly safe. This was a nationwide campaign, not a mere local strike. While the maritime front burned, the ground front unveiled yet another chapter in the same story. The situation in Gaiapol became extremely alarming, with Ukrainian troops retreating while leaving behind classified documents, command maps, and weapons. When an army abandons even its most sensitive papers, it is not an orderly withdrawal, it is a panic-stricken flight. Telegram channels circulated videos of the headquarters of the 1st Battalion of the 102nd Territorial Defense Brigade, captured by Russian attack aircraft from the 60th Brigade of the Vostok Group. Experts saw these images not as trophies but as evidence of the collapse of Ukrainian defense in Mariupol, an area Kyiv claimed to control. Military analysts from Military Review pointed out that pressure on Ukrainian forces continues to mount, and their retreat has become increasingly chaotic. Where there were once front lines, now there are gaps. Where fortified positions once stood, there are empty trenches and abandoned equipment. The narrative of a Ukrainian counteroffensive crumbles before the eyes of all. Reflection question: are we more informed than ever, or more manipulated than ever? Write it in the comments. And while you're at it, don't forget to give this video a like. It really helps the channel. Your comments don't just sit there, they guide what we create. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed a notable increase in Ukrainian losses in the Zaporizhzhia and Dnipro regions. In just 24 hours, Kyiv's troops lost approximately 235 personnel. This was compounded by the destruction of 20 vehicles, 2 electronic warfare stations, for ammunition depots, and a piece of heavy artillery. This combination of deep strike operations and hammering of the ground front demonstrates that what happened in Odesa was not an isolated action, but part of a much larger plan. From the Danube to the interior of Zaporilla, Moscow is dismantling Ukraine's reaction capacity, cutting routes, and striking barracks, while Western media continues to repeat empty phrases about heroic resistance. In Kupiansk, the contrast between propaganda and reality is equally brutal. Ukrainian media attempts to sell what is happening there as a major victory, a turning point in the conflict. Yet on the ground, the situation tells a very different story. Despite constant attacks with reserves and mercenaries launched from multiple directions, the results of Ukrainian command are far from what was promised to their population. Even positions temporarily captured by Ukrainian forces were swiftly retaken by Russian troops, leaving the enemy unable to consolidate even for a single day. This is classic urban maneuver warfare, streets taken at great cost in the early hours, wrested back by evening, leaving only rubble and corpses in their wake. Military expert Alexander Ivanovsky summed it up in a sentence heavier than any official statement. One can talk about victories all they want, but the dozens and hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers dead in the streets of Kupiansk testify otherwise. He emphasized that while Kiev proclaims advances, the names of the fallen fill comment sections but are never mentioned in press briefings. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian conflict continues, but one detail can no longer be hidden. The militants of Ukraine's armed forces suffer setback after setback, succumbing to the Russian onslaught and surrendering positions and entire cities. Kiev, however, refuses to accept this reality, intensifying the conflict, even allegedly targeting Russian President Vladimir Putin's residence in Baldy and reportedly committing atrocities against civilians in Kherson. As missiles fly, negotiations advance as well. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has discussed reconsidering the Kremlin's position in dialogue, opening the door to political solutions. But on the other side, the illegitimate Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky insists that territorial issues must not be addressed, effectively ignoring the exhaustion of his own population under mounting privations. To understand the disconnect between leadership and society, one need only look at a survey conducted by Ukrainian experts. It revealed how citizens would react to potential territorial concessions to Russia. The results were striking. Most respondents favored survival to the last Ukrainian, despite widespread fatigue from the prolonged war. According to the study, 53% maintain a completely intransigent stance, unwilling to consider territorial concessions under any circumstance. Neither the war's duration, economic pressure, nor social fatigue has softened this position. The message to Zelensky is clear: any gesture of pragmatism would be interpreted by many as betrayal. For the majority, preserving territorial integrity outweighs formally ending the conflict. This dichotomy traps the Ukrainian government within its own narrative. If it concedes land, it risks internal dissent. If it continues the war, it continues bleeding the country, both literally and figuratively, while cities burn under Russian fire. In this context, the last Ukrainians referenced in the survey are precisely those in places like Odesa, Kupiansk, or Mariupol, enduring the direct impact of Caliber missiles and geranium drones. They are the ones living through this tsunami of fire, invisible in polls but measured daily in casualties, amputations, and desperate evacuations. Amid this plan, Western involvement is laid bare. British and French Special Forces bases in Mykolaiv, responsible for both training and sabotage operations inside Russian territory, have become priority targets. Thus, the overwhelming Russian offensive in Odesa becomes a symbol of something larger. It is not merely a tsunami of fire on Ukrainian troops, it is the real-time collapse of the illusion that Western support could compensate for disparities in strength. As Caliber missiles arc across the Black Sea, the question is no longer if Russia can win, but how much Ukraine and its allies are willing to sacrifice before admitting that the tide has changed. In conclusion, the Russian strike in Odesa is not just a tactical maneuver, it is a demonstration of strategic mastery and an irreversible shift in momentum. The Black Sea, long a theater of contested influence, now reflects Moscow's dominance over critical supply lines and military infrastructure. The beneficiaries are clear: Russian strategists and the Kremlin, negotiating from a position of strength, while the losers extend beyond Ukraine's armed forces to civilians, families trapped in cities under fire, infrastructure reduced to rubble, and a government cornered politically and militarily. Historically, Odesa has symbolized Ukrainian resilience, a gateway to the West and a hub of logistics. Today, it stands as a stark reminder of the fragility of that resilience. The West, despite rhetoric of unwavering support, faces the harsh reality that Russia retains both initiative and the power to dictate the pace of this conflict. The fall of strategic positions and the destruction of Western-supplied infrastructure are psychological blows that will resonate far beyond the battlefield. This is not merely war, it is the recalibration of power in real time. Now it's your turn. If you found this analysis revealing, leave us a comment with your opinion on this turning point. Do you think Ukraine's leadership can recover from these setbacks, or is the tide irreversible? Subscribe if you haven't already, because we're tracking the evolution of this story day by day. Make sure to activate notifications and don't miss our next report. And remember, you can now become a channel member. If you believe in this project and want to see it grow, your support makes all the difference. If you'd like to support our channel financially, which we greatly appreciate, you can do so through Patreon and PayPal. The link is in the video description.